Welcome back. We're going to talk personal finance now. The big question for young couples just starting out is whether to move out of that downtown condo unit and borrow to buy a home. This becomes especially critical if you're planning a family or if a baby is already on the way. Little ones with all their gear can take up lots of space, and suddenly the need for more room becomes pressing. So joining us now to talk about this common dilemma is Robin Thompson, certified financial planner with Castle Mark Wealth Management. Good to see you, Robin.
Hello, Galit. Nice to see you as well.
All right, so let's start in the beginning because I'm assuming you need a lot of planning here. What's the best way to calculate the type of house you can afford so you don't fall into that proverbial money pit?
Well, you would think that that would have an easy answer to that question, but really, Galit, it is a very complicated thing to buy a house. In fact, purchasing a house is the largest investment or financial decision you will make throughout your lifetime. So it is going to take a good amount of financial planning. For most of us, that will require us to borrow money to purchase a house. So sometimes it becomes more about how much can I afford to borrow so that I can purchase that house. And for that, you're going to need to pull some numbers together and then go down and either see your loan officer at the local bank or your mortgage broker, and they can look at that budget and look at that information and tell you, based on this, you'll qualify for this much mortgage and for this type of purchase price for a home.
All right, so speaking of those experts, how does a bank or mortgage broker determine how much you can afford to borrow?
Well, when a mortgage broker or lender looks at your information, they're going to look at two things. They're going to look at your gross debt service ratio and your total debt service ratio. And essentially, these are ratios that have different factors in them to identify how much mortgage borrowing power you are actually going to have. So the gross debt ratio is going to look at your total housing expenses. So it's going to look at your principal, your interest, your taxes, and your heating cost. And then it's going to look at that against your income. And that number cannot exceed 32% of your gross monthly income. Then they'll look at what's called a total debt service ratio. So you're going to take your housing costs, which again is going to be the principal, the interest, the taxes, the heating, and you're going to add on your debt. So if you finance a car or if you have any personal loans or credit card payments, that will also form part of that ratio. And that number can exceed 40% of your monthly income that you have coming into the house. So there are some things you need to look for, but once you sit down with them, they'll be able to tell you this is what you qualify for and this is exactly what you can purchase.
All right, so once you've done that step, you figure out the amount, where do you look next?
Well, I think this is where the fun part is. Really, this is where you get to say, so this is how much money I can afford in a mortgage payment. This is how much money I can afford in a purchase price. Now you have to look, where do I want to buy a house? What is it that I really need? If you have a growing family, then you'll want to look perhaps maybe at a yard or near good schools or just a little bit more room if they're starting to take up a lot of extra space. So if you look in the GTA area and you're going into a home, the average MLS listing price for 2012 was $451,000. If you go out to Durham, that drops down to about $311,000. If you go out from Niagara to Hamilton, it's anywhere from $230,000 to $330,000. So now it becomes about where do you want to spend your money and what do you want to get for that money. Now keep in mind, if you do move out of the city and you live downtown, you'll have an increase in commuting costs because you still need to come in to go to work. And as well, some of the expenses that are buried into the condo fees, such as maybe heating or hydro, all those other expenses will now be in addition to your mortgage, not as part of a condo fee. So those are things you kind of need to watch out for.
Right, in Toronto, parts of the GTA too these days feel like they're unaffordable. So how do you reduce the cost of buying a home?
Well, the number one way, Galit, if you want to reduce the cost of home ownership is to put the largest down payment possible when you're buying the house. If you take a mortgage that is smaller rather than larger, then obviously you'll have the least amount of interest that you have to pay on that borrowed amount of money. So anytime that you can reduce the principal or pay down the principal, that is what you want to do, because now your interest rate is only going to be based on what you've actually borrowed or what you actually owe to the bank. If you are already in a situation where you have a mortgage, then what you want to look to is perhaps make 2 payments a month. So you're making biweekly payments versus monthly payments, so you're paying more of your principal faster. And also read the fine print, Galit. If you look in the fine print of your mortgage documents, you're often allowed to make a one lump sum contribution against the principal of your mortgage one time a year. So for me, that would be the 17th of August each year. I sock away a little extra money and apply it right to the principal, because then I own more of my property and the bank owns less.
Yeah, smart. All right. Now, of course, if you've already gone through the process of getting a mortgage, or if you're in the process of doing it right now, we've all heard the terms fixed rate and variable rates. Should first-time buyers look at one over the other?
Well, this really comes down to what is the interest rate risk. So if you think that interest rates are going to go lower than they are, and personally I don't think that interest rates have much room to go any lower, then you'll stick with a variable rate mortgage, because then you're paying an interest rate at prevailing interest rates. If you stick to a fixed mortgage, which essentially means you're going into a fixed term. So say, for instance, it's a 5-year fixed term. Your rate will be fixed at that amount for that period of 5 years, and it won't move. Whereas in the variable, it will go up and down. So you need to have an understanding as what kind of personality am I as well? Do I like to have a fixed payment that I'm paying each month so I can budget for it? Or do I want to take a chance on guessing or estimating where mortgage rates and interest rates will go and sort of try to take advantage of some bottom lower rates? I mean, I can never predict interest rates, Galit, so I'm always more of a fan of go with a fixed rate for the basis points that it's going to save you. It gives me the peace of mind that I need to be able to handle my budgeting and my financing.
And I guess, like with anything finance related, there's pros and cons to both.
Exactly. I think it really comes down to how much room do you have in your budget. If interest rates do rise again, they're at lows, so if they do start to rise and you don't lock in fast enough, will you be able to service that mortgage debt over the period of time? Or as right now, if you look online today at a 5-year fixed mortgage, you're looking at about 2.74, you're looking at the variables about 2.45. So you have to decide which is best for you. Speak to your financial advisor, speak to your mortgage broker, get the details before you make this huge decision. It's a great decision from the standpoint that you're going to build equity, you have a home, but it's also a decision you need to make sure that you can pay for and service over a longer period of time.
Very good. Robin Thompson of Castlemark Wealth Management, thanks so much for your time and your insight tonight.
Oh, it was great to see you, Galit.